All right, so this is the tutorial on how to do the little neck thing that goes over the shoulder. I don't know what the hell you call it. That thing that goes over his head that's like sits on his shoulders. That thing for the Stay Puft Marshmallow guy and his hat. I'm going to show you how to do that. So basically with the measurements that I took for my client, I took his back measurement, which is like shoulder to shoulder, his head for the hat, and neck measurement. My client has kind of he's really broad shouldered. He has less of a defined neck, so it's really wide around that area. So I took the neck measurement and I added 1 inch because his head is 23, so I have it kind of in the middle. And because I'm doing that, I'm using the Yaya hand fabric from Joann's. So it is stretchy, so that'll be nice. That's why it's kind of in the middle, slightly smaller than his head, 1 inch larger than his neck. So he can just put it over his head like that, and I don't have to worry about anything fastening in the back or anything like that. So that's what I'm using. So right here is his shoulder to shoulder measurement, which is 20. Whatever that is on you, that'll be your measurement this way. And then lengthwise, I'm doing, let's see, it's hard to hold hand. Lengthwise, I have 20 inches. So it's the measurement of the shoulder by 20. You can also try on this pattern to see where it lies on your body. And if you need to make it longer, you can totally add extra inches. But basically that's what this pattern is. I already cut it out of my fabric. And here's what it is here. It is curling a bit, as you can see here, which, can you see it? I don't know. It's curling a little bit in. So, and then of course on Stay Puft, there's an inside border of white, which I did also buy of the same Yaya hand fabric. I did use a coupon at Joann's because it is quite pricey, but with the coupon at least it doesn't hurt your wallet that much. 0.66 yards, I think that was about 20 inches of the white. And does it say white? And I got 0.44, so almost half a yard of the blue. And then just to save a little money, and then sorry, it's like, and then just save a little money, I didn't choose a Yaya hand fabric in red. I chose this dancewear material, so that way the little bow that falls under here, the little red bow, and then the little red tassel thing that sits on top of the head, it's like really soft, really floppy. And also this is a couple bucks cheaper a yard in comparison to the Yaya hand fabric, so I thought that would just kind of ease the grand total a little bit. Of course, you can still use this with any fabric. You can do it all dancewear, you could do it all cotton if you're scrap fabric. I just chose a Yaya hand fabric because it looks very cartoony, and that's what I'm going for this Stay Puft Marshmallow accessory set. It's just cartoony and cute, and the color's very vivid. I know I'm kind of in the dark right now, but it's very nice blue and it's stretchy. So that's why I went with it. Of course, whatever you want to do with it, that's up to you, but that's just my suggestion. So yeah, with that white Yaya hand fabric, I'm going to use my pattern, and I'm going to make the little white border about, since he's a big guy, I'm not going to use ½ an inch, probably going to use 3/4 of an inch wide on the border, and I'm just going to have that all the way around, and then the back as well. And I will also show you how to do the hat, but let me go ahead and do this and get more into it, and then we'll move on to the little hat. So now I'm going on to the hat. Just a few things about the pattern. This is going to be the little band that goes around the head, and that's going to be cut out in blue. The length of this will be the circumference of your head, whatever that is, and the width of it, I'm making this 2.5 inches wide. So I already cut 2 of these because I want it double-sided in the same fabric, because I want this to really stretch over the head. So I already did, this is going to be the white fabric of the puffy beret. And I did a full circle, and I just folded it in half so I can have a half circle cut too. And then you're going to sew these down the middle once you cut them out, so that way you have your full circle. Which is just easier, because otherwise you'd have to get like a really long piece of fabric and just spend more money. So it's just more cost effective this way. And the diameter of the circle I have here is 21 inches. Don't forget to add your seam allowance all the way around, cut it out, and then like I said, right side to right side once you get to your 2 pieces. Okay, so a couple things I wanted to mention. I already sewed my 2 pieces of the band for the hat. Now I'm making a full-size hat. I'm not doing like a little petite cartoony thing the way the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man has his hat, because it's smaller than his head. This is actually going to be worn around the whole head. So again, circumference of your head, unless you want to make it a smaller version. So I serged them together on one side, just one side only. If you don't have a serger, you can go ahead and do a zigzag stitch, which I would recommend, because a zigzag stitch allows stretchy fabrics to stretch. If you just do a straight stitch, your straight stitch is going to snap once there's stretch, and you know, that kind of pressure and tension applied, it'll stretch and snap, and then your hat will start falling apart. So please do a zigzag stitch if you don't have a serger. Another thing, what I want to do is, see how it's gonna fold up like this. We'll put the lettering last, and I do want to have him try like a seamless thing on the lettering, so I'm not going to stitch them or anything like that in place or embroider them. I'm going to glue the border, the white border around the shoulder thingy, and the letters on the band here, Stay Puft, just to give it seamless, and also to avoid any issues with the machine eating the fabric or just jacking it up when you're trying to do that, which I can already foresee happening. So I'm going to do it like that, and I think it'll work out just fine. I already also sewed together my 2 halves of my circle. I serged those. Again, zigzag stitch. See how it's really big? We're going to be pleating and scrunching it to fit the circumference of the band, of the length of the band here, to give it that puffiness. And once we do that, we're going to, here, let me fold this. I'll show this while I'm doing it, but I'll also show it just as an explanation right here. You're going to open it up. Okay, so I'm going to start putting this, remember, right side to right side. And I'm going to start scrunching it and make this circle, like pleat it until it fits the 21 inches, 22 inches that I said was the circumference for the head. Also, when we go back up, after we do that, so one side will have all the pleating. When we go back up to do the inside and tack this to the hat, I'm going to use horsehair braid just to give it some more stiffness at the top where the pleats are. So I'll do this, I'll put this over the pleating because it'll be already stuck to the blue part. And then I'm going to bring this up and fold it and then stitch it to the hat. Of course, it might look super confusing right now. There's no pleating yet, but I will show it as I do it. I just wanted to explain that in flat terms before I start pleating and doing all that stuff. So that's what we're going to do, and then let's just keep on going here. Okay, so a better explanation. Like I said, right now I would do it again. So what I did first, I didn't mention in the step before, my long piece, I did sew it to make the headband first, and then you do right side to right side, as you can see here. This is the inside, and this is the wrong side of the one side of the headband. We just kind of tuck that in. You'll see what I did was, remember, this was such a large circle. You have to pleat it And this actually didn't take me very long. You really don't have to have any instructions. You just keep pleating the white part until you pleat the whole thing and it fits around your blue headband. You know, it's quite a lot of pleats to get it to fit. Again, don't worry. I mean, if you get to the end and there's still a lot of slack of the white, just keep folding and pleating and keep going until it completely fits the blue part. As you can see, I have tons of pins because I had to do, you know, multiple pleats. But again, it wasn't that bad. So once, let me pull this out so you can see how the hat looks. So once I stitch this, and I'm going to stitch it 1/2 inch, so the stitch line will be about right here going across. That's when I'm going to take my horsehair braid, and let's say, let me just make a mark so you guys understand. See, right, that little black line that I did, let's say that's the stitch line. I believe I have here is a 1 inch wide horsehair braid. They do sell different widths of it, so just be aware that this is 1 inch. I'm going to put it right like a little more than half past where my stitch line for the pleated part is, and then I'm going to stitch it again so that way I can tack it down to this. And this is just to give it some stiffness right here, so hopefully the hat doesn't fall too flat, and it gives it some structure, you know, and there is some give to it, so don't worry, this will not alter the stretchiness of your hat. It'll be just fine. So then I'm going to sew that right below my original stitch, maybe about 1 millimeter, less than 1 centimeter below this little stitch, so that way it goes more into the white part rather than the blue part of the hat. So just kind of visualize that. And then once I have that tacked on, then I'm going to fold up the band, because remember, the same material is like it's lining. Okay, like that, you see? And then I'm going to fold it, and then I'm going to fold it right up to my stitch line, my original stitch line, which will be that little black line that I drew for reference. And then I'm going to pin it down so that way it looks really nice and finished on the inside. And then I'm going to sew that down. Let's see if I sew that down. Okay, it should still be in the blue part. So you might want to switch like to a blue thread to do this so it all matches. So just kind of eyeball it so you have it like that. So if I stitch it, if by any chance you are catching the white part, then just switch your thread to white just so that it matches. But it'll be really nice and neat. And then you can turn it inside out, and then you'll have like a little, let me carefully do this while my pins are still in. And then you'll have like a little puff man beret. As you can see that right there. And then we still have to add the little red part. So just go ahead and follow my directions as I stated right there. And then it should be really, really nice looking. Okay, so I'm doing the inside finishing of my hat. I decided to do whip stitching, like invisible type whip stitching, instead of just sewing a straight line over it. Because again, I was like, why, if I'm keeping with this seamless thing, why am I gonna do stitches and show it on the outside of this hat? So I decided to do that. And that's what it looks on the inside. I only have a little bit left. I've been watching some TV shows while I'm doing this, because it takes a little bit. So basically what you do when you sew something like this, you get it started right under the fold. As you can see, I had folded, see how you can see that's the bottom of the hat. I have folded it and pinned everything so that way it's nice and neat. And then you push your needle through here. And then you go over it, but underneath you have to catch, oh God, Hannah, get away. Sorry, it's my dog. You have to catch the white part. Oh, I can't even see it. The white part underneath. So you have to catch that, and then you come up through the blue. And then you just keep going around and around until you come up through the other side. Now, especially with this Yaya hand fabric, it gets, I guess you could only describe this as sticky on the needle. I also, if your fingers aren't calloused or you're not afraid of the needle going through your finger, to use a thimble on this part. But it does get kind of sticky with this fabric, so you do need to kind of be rough with it at times and just kind of like pull it, and I push it out with my thumbnail if it gets stuck. But basically that's what I'm doing. You just catch the white underneath, and then you push it through the blue, and then you just keep going around and around. And I like this idea too, because not only does it look neater on the inside, but these whip stitches, they can kind of stretch with the hat, which is what I like too. So I'm gonna finish that, and then we'll go ahead and do the little red top for the little red tassel thing or ribbon that sits on top of the hat. Okay, cool. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and do the little top decorations for this hat. Now, in making your own pattern, I'll show you what my length is here, but I mean, your hat may vary. The circumference of the top of the hat may not be as big as mine. So as I have here where it's 2 pieces, kind of just eyeball it and measure like that and see how far you want it to hang off. In this case, I wanted it to be 13 inches, so it hangs off quite a little bit. And the pattern I made, I'm just gonna cut one because I'm looking at the pictures and it does only seem like he has one of these little ribbon things that hang off his hat. So I'm gonna just cut one. I did this 2 inches wide, and then of course, like I just said, this was 13 inches long. Also, try and find like, you could use anything for a pattern. I use this because I thought it was a good size since my hat is so giant, which is obviously a tomato sauce can, but you know, you could use whatever you want. Hairspray can, I don't know, what other, some other cylindrical shape. And I cut the blue fabric out of it. So it's gonna be the red ribbon, and then this little blue circle goes on top. Again, I'm going for seamless. So once I cut my pattern out for the red, I'm going to stitch it to the center first. This I'm gonna stitch, and then I'm gonna come on top, and again, so it's seamless, so there's no threads or stitches being seen. Then I'm going to glue my little blue round thingy on top in the center to cover that part of the ribbon that I'm going to be stitching down to the hat. And that's about it. And then a couple other things next, because the last thing you want to do is do the lettering, which is Stay Puft on the band of the hat. I thought of 2 different ways that we could do this. One is you print out on paper the word Stay Puft in thick, bold, fat lettering, cut it out and use that as a template to cut your white letters out to glue on top of the band. Or another thing I was thinking is actually buy stickers of letters, stick them on the white fabric, and then while it's still stuck to the white stretchy fabric, cut that out because it'll keep it stiff. It'll be a great pattern just to cut off, and then when you're done, you can peel it off. Or actually, I just thought of a third one. What you could do also, get a stencil of letters for Stay Puft, and then use white fabric glue, like the puffy paint kind. That'll also work. And then you can paint in the stencil to get your word Stay Puft on top. Which one I'm going to use, I don't know yet. I think the sticker method would be really nice because I would like to use the letters in white from this for that, but I also have white puffy paint. So it'll just be one of those things once I get to it, what's going to be easier for me and the most, I guess, professionally neat looking type stuff. So I'm going to do all this, and then I'll talk about how I ended up doing this part once I get there and I'm done with it. And then we'll move on to the rest of the shoulder thing, which I remember what it's called. I believe it's the little bib of his costume. So, all right, let's keep on going. And just a quick tip, if you're using that Yaya hand fabric, I don't know about you if you've used it before or not, but I cannot sew through this thing with stretch needles, ballpoint needles, micro-tech. I can't use any needle. It all skips. I don't know why. The only way I can sew it perfectly and beautifully is if I use some type of webbing or stabilizer on top of it. So this is what I'm using, and this is just like iron-on tape, like when you want to hem, like hem tape to iron on, but it works really well, and I don't get any skip stitches. So I'm kind of using it here on the bib. I was gonna line it originally, but I was like, man, I need to buy more stretchy blue fabric because I was gonna use cotton, and I needed to stretch to go over the head, and I was like, this will just be much easier and faster. So I kind of use this as bias tape, and right now I already did the whole thing around, and then I made bias tape out of some extra blue, and I'm just gonna put it around the neck hole, and that'll be, you know, the bias tape facing for that. And then I'll just flip this, if I can grab it, here we go. Flip this right side over, turn it, pin, well not pin it. Remember with this fabric, you can pin it, but in this case, since it's right on top and this is gonna be the part that you see, I'm just gonna use bobby pins to hold everything in place while I, you know, flip it, like, you know, turn it out, and then sew, and then top stitch it. So that way all this webbing tape or hem tape will be underneath the bib, and you know, it'll stabilize it while you sew, because oh, I'm sorry, it's so dark in here, because I just can't, like I said. Yeah, and don't mind the diapers. My son just went nuts with the bucket, or with the box of diapers earlier, and I gave up on life. So with this, again, with the Yaya hand fabric, right now I do have a ballpoint needle on my machine, I believe, or it's a stretch needle. But regardless, you will need to use some type of stabilizer or webbing on top, so that way you can sew through it and it'll get through, and then just less headaches. Because believe me, I had a ton of headaches while I was sewing another type of Yaya hand fabric, until I realized I was going to need some type of stabilizer on top. And then once I used it, it sewed beautifully. So I'm going to finish doing that, and then I already cut out all my strips. These are 3/4 of an inch wide, and then I just cut like really long strips. I didn't really measure them because I will measure it out, and I'm going to be gluing these down on top of the bib once I'm done with the neck hole facing and the little bias tape webbing thing that I just showed you. I'm going to glue this with the tacky glue on top in the corners, how the little Stay Puft man has it. And then I'm going to work on the little ribbon, the red ribbon tie that goes underneath this. Okay, and then once all that's done, then I will concentrate on going back to my lettering on the hat. So you see, I'm kind of having a sewing party here in my living room, watching Rosemary's Baby. Never seen it before, but that's the hat. It came out really well. I just need to put the lettering on it for Stay Puft. And then after that, I'll be done. So it's a pretty easy project. Just keep in mind these tips that I'm giving you, especially about sewing with this Yaya hand fabric, because damn, you're really gonna need that stabilizer stuff. But other than that, let's keep going. Okay, so I'm discovering something that I wanted to share while I was doing it. So I used my tacky glue, as I was saying, because I wanted it to be seamless. And the issue with sewing without getting skip stitches with the Yaya hand fabric, well, I glued my stuff down, and then in the morning I came back, and the Yaya hand stuff is like Teflon, like nothing will stick to it. So I'm like the white strips on the bib were peeling off, but they were kind of hard. So I was like, what the hell? I'll just stick it back down and I'll try and sew with really big stitches down in matching thread. Well, I guess the glue that hardened, that left like a hardened layer on the white strips for the bib, it hardened it and it made it sort of like a stabilizer. So now it's sewing beautifully. So that's what I'm doing. Again, I'm learning as I go. This fabric is very strange. You gotta do weird shit with it. It's just so weird. But anyways, let me just show you what I'm doing at this point. So just to keep everything even and leveled, I put some masking tape along down here that goes along the seam line when I sewed the blue part down with the bias tape, what do you call it? Hem tape iron thingy. And then I'm just using that as a guide. And then I'm gonna let this dry for a little bit, and then once this gets hard and I'll come back, then I will top stitch twice, on each side. And then we'll do the red part. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because I thought it was like the weirdest thing. And I was kind of bummed out because I did want it to be seamless, but oh well, what can you do? So, yeah. Let's get started on the little ribbon, shall we? So now onto the little red thingies. I cut 4 pieces because for this I did want it to be much nicer and more polished looking rather than the single cut that I did for the hat for the little ribbon, because I wanted to keep it light. And again, it's a hat, don't want anything heavy crushing it down. But for this, I did 4 strips, 23 inches long, and they're 2.5 inches wide. That does include the seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew them, turn them inside out, and then probably skip this in the video, but once I have them ready, I'm going to bring them underneath here, of course, not on top. And I'm going to hand stitch them in place using the like the little bias strip that I made from the other blue fabric. And I'm going to stitch it on there, just on that layer, not through showing, so it's kind of just catching the bias tape. And then so that way it's, again, try and keep it seamless, and then it'll come out through the bottom, and then I can do like a little, you can do like the little tie and then stitch it by hand into place, so that way the tie doesn't undo itself. And then after that we will be done with this, and then those letters for the hat. But yeah, that's how I'm gonna do it. Okay, so quick tip if you're not familiar with some things when you're sewing. So right now, obviously, some of this is a little nasty looking. It's uneven. So you want to trim this, trim everything even, so it's nice and neat. Even inside, it does make a difference on the outside. And then when you turn it inside out, in order for you to keep these really nice corners, these 90-degree angles, you get your shears and you cut off the corners very close to the point here, the 90-degree angle of the stitches. Not into it, but just right up to it. And then so that way when you turn it inside out, these two 90-degree angles are perfect and it looks good. So just a little tip on that, okay? She's so black, she blends in with the couch. Don't worry, that dog has a head. Anyways, so I went the easy route. I took my Tulip dimensional fabric paint. Anyways, it actually worked out really, really well. I don't have a printer, so normally I would have made like a stencil. But you know what? This was way quicker and I was overthinking it, and it actually came out really, really good. You just have to be really careful with it. Make sure every time you have this, you clean your tip, you know, knock all the air bubbles out and push all the paint to the top, so that way you don't have little explosions going on here. But other than that, yeah, that is a wrap, folks. I love the way this looks. I hope my client will be very happy, but I think he will because everything looks great. So that's my little hat. And then, like I told you, how I attached it. And there you go. So happy. Enjoy. Happy Halloween.